nerds, what's up? It is time to prepare for the 5th book in the Stormlight Archive, Winds and Truth, and I could not be more excited. Now, I did a little recap video when The Lost Metal came out, and a lot of people really liked it. I realize a lot of us are not going to have time to reread the Stormlight Archive between now and Winds of Truth release, so today I've got a quick recap of all 4 books for you. Now, this will work whether or not you've read all the books. You can just do each book individually. I was sure to not put future book spoilers into the previous books recaps, so they are safe to watch individually no matter where you are. And then I got some help from my friend Lore over at Lore of the Worlds to do a little character recap at the end to just give you an update, not just on plot, but where our characters stand. So I hope this is helpful for you to prepare. And yes, as a warning, I say Jasna and Adolin, so prepare yourselves now. That's how it is. Without further ado, let's get into the recaps. Book 1, The Way of Kings. The book opens with a prelude and a prologue. We learn that 9 of the 10 heralds have decided to abandon their oath pact and leave Talm to suffer the torture on his own. They hope he can be strong enough to stop the desolations from coming. 4,500 years later, we see Seth, Truthless of Shinover, kill King Gavilar during a party celebrating a peace treaty with the Parshendi. In part 1, we meet Kaladin. Kaladin is a slave for the official reason that he is a deserter, even though that isn't true. He is being plagued by an unusually intelligent windspren. The slaves arrive at the Shattered Plains and are put into High Prince Sadeas' bridge crews. The leader of the crews, Gaz, and Kaladin immediately clash. The windspren introduces herself as Silfrena, or Sil. After weeks in the bridge crews, he is the only one left surviving of the original slaves, save one. A boy is brought in that reminds him of his brother Tien. That boy and the other last remaining survivor die on the next bridge run. Kaladin is despondent and attempts to commit suicide, but is convinced away from it by Sil. He goes back to the bridge crews and bribes Gaz to allow him to become a bridge leader of Bridge 4. We see a flashback of Kaladin where we learn his father is a surgeon, and that is why Kaladin is trained in that art. However, Kaladin and Lirin argue about whether soldiering or being a surgeon is more worthwhile. Kaladin wants to fight. We also meet Shallan Davar, who arrives in Kara Barant after chasing Jasna Kholin for months. She is requested to be Jasna's ward in order to save her family financially after her father's death. She plans on stealing Jasna's soulcaster. Unfortunately, Jasna rejects Shallan. Shallan, unwilling to give up, eventually convinces Jasna to take her by proving she seeks scholarship in her own time. During this pursuit, she meets Kabsal, an ardent who is trying to convert Jasna from atheism to Vorinism. We have a series of interludes. First is with Ishik, who lives in the Pure Lake. He is quizzed by world hoppers of the 17th Shard, who are looking for Hoid. In the second one, we meet 2 of Shallan's brothers, Balat and Wickham. In the third, we learn of Seth's Oathstone and how he is bound to obey anyone who holds it. In part 2, we go to the Shattered Plains where a war is being fought between the Alethi and the Parshendi, called the Vengeance Pact, due to Gavilar's death. We now meet Dalinar, his sons Renarin and Adolin, the king and his nephew Elhokar, and the High Prince Sadeas. Dalinar has been having fits during high storms, dreaming of uniting them and wanting to end this war. Adolin worries about his father's worsening reputation. Many of the High Princes are on the hunt for gem hearts, found within the giant chasm fiends, a monster staple of the Shattered Plains. During one hunt, a chasm fiend surprises them and climbs to where the civilians are, rather than the fighters. While rushing to save the bystanders, Elhokar's saddle strap snaps, throwing him to the ground, but Dalinar saves him before the chasm fiend can kill him. Elhokar believes the cut strap to be an assassination attempt and wants Dalinar to investigate. Although Dalinar and Sadeas are on difficult ground, Dalinar reveals to Adolin that they have both sworn to protect Elhokar in honor of Gavilar's memory. During the next high storm, Dalinar witnesses a vision of Knights Radiant and believes he speaks with the Almighty, who says to unite them. Dalinar thinks this means to unite the High Princes. Kaladin attempts to rouse and train the members of Bridge 4 to no success. Sil is becoming more capable of complex thought and memories. During the next bridge run, Kaladin takes position in front, not being hit when everyone else is. He tries to treat their wounds and requires their bridge to carry wounded back to camp instead of deserting them. Afterwards, he convinces Rock and Teft to help him with the injured members of the crew. His crew is put on chasm duty where they are impressed by Kaladin's skill with a spear. After Rock cooks a meal, the bridge crew becomes more united and some join Kaladin for his morning practice. In a flashback, we see Tien and Kaladin's close relationship, as well as learn that the city lord of his town has died, leaving him spheres to get trained as a surgeon in Kar Baranth. The new city lord, Rashon, arrives. At a feast, Sadeas is appointed to High Prince of Information to investigate Elhokar's attempted assassination, despite the fact that many think it's just a product of Elhokar's increasing paranoia. Adolin grows angry that Dalinar still trusts Sadeas. Adolin does not trust the visions. The High Princes rebuff Dalinar's attempts to make pacts. During a battle with the Parshendi, Dalinar summons his blade Oathbringer and starts to give in to the power of the thrill, but then feels sick and hears a voice saying, "Life before death." He also notices a large Parshendi wearing shardplate who does not join the battle. Dalinar begins to think of abdicating for his son Adolin. Navani, Gavilar's widow, tells him this is unwise. We end this part with 3 interludes. In the first, we meet Risen and Vistim, 2 traitors. In the second, we meet Axes the Collector, who is attempting to find and record info about all of the Spren. In the third, we see Seth, who once again has a new master. In part 3, Shallan is studying under Jasnah and enjoying the scholarship so much she has to keep reminding herself that she is only here to steal the Soulcaster, which she is increasingly losing the nerve to do. She meets King Taravangian, who is known to be dull. While drawing, Shallan is scared when she mindlessly draws creatures with symbols for their heads. Shallan begins to befriend Capsal despite Jasnah's warnings. After a brutal lesson by Jasnah, Shallan finally steals the Soulcaster. After a few weeks of unsuccessful attempts at using it, Shallan draws the creatures again. She begins to be pursued by the creatures, and while scared, she touches a glass goblet filled with diamond spheres and is transported to Shadesmar. She soulcasts the goblet into blood. Jasnah finds her, and she lies and pretends she has cut herself in order to hide her soulcasting. Because of this, she is put on suicide watch. Jasnah comes to apologize, thinking she has pushed Shallan too hard. While there, Capsal comes in with jam and bread. While trying to poison Jasnah, he accidentally poisons himself and Shallan. Shallan is worried that Jasnah will not be able to save her with the fake replaced Soulcaster, so she reveals in her final moments that she has stolen the real one. Kaladin has successfully gotten all Bridge 4 members to train with him. Gaz knows he needs to get rid of Kaladin and wants to do it on a run so it is not traced back, but he is also worried about his debts and becoming a bridge man himself. During the next run, Kaladin tries a new side carry technique to disastrous results for the entire army. He is beaten and left out in the High Storm for the Almighty's judgment. Teft gives Kaladin a dun sphere for luck. It recharges during the High Storm, but is done when the group finds Kaladin again after the storm, incredibly still alive. Teft tests his theory that Kaladin is radiant, and is surprised to find he is right. Kaladin unknowingly takes in Stormlight to heal when spheres are placed in his hand. After healing, Kaladin begins to train the crew in the sphere as a means to letting them all escape. In flashbacks, we learn that Kaladin's father stole the spheres that were given to Kaladin on Wistio's death. Tien is conscripted into the army, so Kaladin volunteers to keep him safe and promises to return him alive in 4 years. Further along in the future, we see Kaladin kill a Shardbearer but refuse to take the blade because he does not want to become a corrupt Light Eyes. His commanding officer, Amaram, who Kaladin respects, ends up killing Kaladin's crew because he does not believe Kaladin would really give up the shards. He takes them for himself, saying he will tell everyone he killed the Shardbearer. As a respect for saving Amaram's life, he will allow Kaladin to live, albeit as a slave. We have 3 interludes. In the first, we meet a mistress who is destroying works of art. In the second, we view people measuring Spren, where it is discovered that Spren lock in once they know they are being measured. In the third, we see Seth killing King Hanavanar of Jah Keved. In part 4, Dalinar has another High Storm vision in which he sees the Day of Recreance, or when the Knights Radiant abandoned their oaths. Renarin says it may be possible for them to prove or disprove the truth of the visions by having Navani transcribe them and asking Jasnah to research the details. During the next vision, Navani realizes Dalinar has been speaking the dead language, the Dawn Chant, and that this proves the visions are true. Dalinar and Navani kiss. At a feast, Sadeas and Dalinar discuss their fractured friendship, but agree to ally again to win the war. During a fight against the Parshendi that they are attacking together, Sadeas is almost killed but is rescued by Dalinar. Sadeas is surprised he'd risked so much for him, and Dalinar says it is because of the book The Way of Kings. Teft reveals Kaladin's power to him. On the next bridge run, a group of Parshendi archers attempt to kill Bridge 4. While the men try to escape, Dalinar defeats the Parshendi force, raising his blade in salute to Bridge 4. Later, Sadeas and Dalinar are going to run another assault together. While fighting, Dalinar notices that Sadeas' army has fled with their bridge crews, leaving Dalinar's army completely surrounded and stranded. Adolin and Dalinar realize they are going to die, and decide to die fighting, and with honor. Kaladin notices that Dalinar's army is stranded, and Bridge 4 decides to go back and rescue them. Syl remembers that she is an honor spren. During the fight to rescue Dalinar, Kaladin reflects on the day Tien died, when he could not protect him. Kaladin finally says the words, "I will protect those who cannot protect themselves." Kaladin explodes with light and fights the Parshendi with incredible skill and speed. Dalinar fights the armored Parshendi he saw earlier, who exclaims, "It is you, I have found you." Kaladin rushes to save Dalinar, and they both retreat. Sadeas has lied about abandoning Dalinar, and Dalinar lets the lie stand, although he confronts Sadeas in private. Sadeas thinks Dalinar is weak and bad for Elhokar. Sadeas refuses to sell the bridgeman to Dalinar, but Dalinar finally offers Oathbringer for the bridgeman, and Sadeas accepts. Dalinar forces Elhokar to admit to cutting his horse's saddle himself, and tells Elhokar to make him High Prince of War. Dalinar thinks it's time to be the Blackthorn again. In Part 5, Shallan realizes that Jasnah never had a working soulcaster. To prove this to Jasnah, she attempts to go to Shadesmar again. The figures ask her for a truth, and she tells them she killed her father. Jasnah rescues Shallan from drowning in Shadesmar and agrees to take her back on as a ward and train her, as long as she promises to never lie to Jasnah again. Jasnah reveals that she believes the Parshmen are the Voidbringers. She also reveals the existence of the Ghostbloods, a secret organization also seeking answers about the Voidbringers. Shallan realizes her father was a part of this organization. Seth goes to kill the last monarch on his list, and it is revealed that Tarvangian is actually his master. The next person he wants Seth to kill is Dalinar. Dalinar makes Kaladin captain of Bridge 4. Dalinar receives another vision in which he realizes that the voice was never alive. This voice proclaims that the Almighty is dead and was killed by Odium. And that is the end of the Way of Kings. We're going to take a quick break from recaps to talk about today's sponsor, Wraithmarked Creative, which is an indie publisher that has been making some really cool special editions. I specifically want to talk about a Kickstarter they have going on right now with only a week left. It's for 2 special editions for 2 SPFBO winners, Where Loyalties Lie by Rob J. Hayes and The Sword of Kaigan by M.L. Wang. Now, you know SPFBO is near and dear to my heart since I was a judge for 3 years, and also I own Wraithmarked Creative's first special edition of M.L. Wang's Sword of Kaigan because that was one of my top 5 books the year I read it and one of my top fantasy books of all time. So this Kickstarter, sort of my jam. These special editions are gorgeous and completely custom, with custom art, custom internal layouts, foiling, and colored edges. Additionally, this Kickstarter in particular is cool because it will be a part of their new SPFBO series in which they publish special editions of SPFBO winners. They already have more winners signed on for future editions. These editions will also fit together on your shelf with a single image being displayed on the spines when they are all in a set. They've already flown past all of their other stretch goals, and there's only one more. If they hit 400K, they'll do a custom sprayed edge. So check out this Kickstarter by clicking the link in my description box, read some fantastic books, and make your shelf look prettier with Wraithmarked Creative. Book 2, Words of Radiance. In the prologue, we once again see Gavilar's death, but this time from Jasnah's perspective. We see her enter Shadesmar for the first time, we see that she is watching Elhokar's wife, and that she has paid an assassin to come to her if any offer is made against her family, and that she will pay more. After Gavilar's death, she receives members of the Parshendi ruling council who admit to killing Gavilar. In part 1, we are with Shallan and Jasnah. Shallan sees Pattern for the first time. She is informed that she will be betrothed to Jasnah's cousin, Adolin. Later, she sees Pattern again, and Jasnah explains the Knights Radiant and the Orders, and that her and Shallan are of different orders. Shallan's spren is a cryptic. Shallan briefly sees Jasnah's spren, who resembles an inkblot. Jasnah gives Shallan the book Words of Radiance, which is information on the Order of Lightweavers. She also reveals her intention to find Urithru, the legendary city of the Knights Radiant. She also hopes that she can convince the Alethi leaders to expel Parshmen, who she thinks are the Voidbringers. Later, their ship is attacked, and Jasnah is stabbed through the heart, but her body cannot be found. Shallan enters Shadesmar and convinces the bead representing the boat to sink, hoping to save some of the other sailors. Shallan wakes on shore and recovers some of Jasnah's things. She realizes she has to accept that Jasnah is dead. She convinces a slaver named Tvlakov to escort her to the Shattered Plains. In a flashback, we see Shallan believing the world is ending and that it's her fault. She feels unworthy of the love her father is giving her. There are 2 corpses in the room, a man and Shallan's mother. Shallan and her father pass his safe, and she sees the light from the monster inside of it. Kaladin has been made captain of the freed Bridgemen. The members of Bridge 4 get tattoos to show their freedom, and also tattoos of a glyph for Bridge 4. Kaladin attempts to get one, but no matter what he does, his body heals the mark away. He has put himself and other Bridge 4 members in charge of guarding Dalinar. Syl tells Kaladin that there are other spren like her trying to create Surgebinders, but that she is the only honor spren, and she defied the Stormfather's wishes to come to Kaladin. Kaladin continues training the Bridgemen, and also has begun to test and record his abilities with Sigil. When they return to camp, Kaladin sees Dalinar friendly with a new arrival, Amaram. Dalinar has another vision in which he sees Knights Radiant discussing spren that were touched by Saja'anat, and how they are different. After spotting a spren as Saja'anat's spy, Dalinar sees the spren animate into a rock, turning into a thunderclast. Dalinar awakes and sees glyphs scratched onto his wall reading 62 days, death follows. The other High Princes are furious at Dalinar's changes, becoming High Prince of War and saying all gem hearts now belong to the crown. Dalinar plans to disarm the High Princes by having Adolin duel and win their shard blades and plate. He also intends to reform the Knights Radiant. We get 4 interludes. In the first and fourth, Ashonai contemplates how the Parshendi conspired to kill Gavilar in order to stop their old gods from returning. Yet this will bring the destruction of her people. They are trying to discover more forms but are unsuccessful. Her sister Venli explains she has found a new form, Storm form. Ashonai is worried this will attract their old gods and wants to instead ask Dalinar for peace. Venli and Ashonai go to the Five for permission on Storm form, and Ashonai eventually convinces everyone to allow her to try first, since Venli's knowledge is too valuable to lose. In the second, we meet Yim, the cobbler, who has a spren and can use Stormlight. He makes shoes for children and heals them if they come to his shop. He is murdered by a mysterious man with a shard blade, who tells him he is guilty for a crime in his youth. We will later realize that this is the herald Nail. In the third, we see Risen again, who will trade with the Reshi on behalf of her sick master. They are resistant, and in order to impress them, she insists on talking to the great shell that is the island. During this, the rope breaks and Risen falls. She wakes to her legs paralyzed, and is informed that her boldness has caused the island to grant a live Larkin to her. In part 2, as Shallan travels to the Shattered Plains, she learns how to take in Stormlight. She meets Gaz, who is now a deserter. Shallan also meets Tin, who thinks Shallan's story of being betrothed to Adolin is made up, and offers to help her with her scam. Shallan plays along. Later, she discovers that Tin was a part of a group and plot that killed Jasnah. Tin realizes Shallan was Jasnah's ward and attempts to kill her, but Shallan kills her first with her shard blade. Tin's contacts, the Ghostbloods, contact her for another job, and Shallan accepts on her behalf. Adolin wins his first duel as a part of the plan and gifts the captured shard blade to Renarin. Nobody else will duel him for a while, and it is revealed that it is because Sadeas has been bribing people to decline. However, later, Sadeas wants to take advantage of Adolin's hot-headedness and encourages people to duel him. Kaladin and Moash discuss their feelings on Amaram and what they will do to get revenge. Kaladin also meets Sahil, an ardent and ex-soldier. He fights with Adolin and loses. Kaladin eventually tells Dalinar about his experience with Amaram, and Dalinar asks for proof and promises to investigate. After a clumsy attempt on Elhokar's life, Kaladin is charged with his protection. Kaladin increasingly doesn't believe that Dalinar will do anything about Amaram, however. Syl worries about Kaladin's obsession with revenge and his fighting, which isn't to protect anyone. Seth arrives and attacks the group of Dalinar, Renarin, Adolin, Elhokar, and Kaladin. It is believed he is there to kill Elhokar, but Seth reveals it's actually Dalinar. Kaladin is stabbed in the arm with a shard blade, causing it to go lifeless and numb. Seth tries to kill Dalinar, but Dalinar catches the shard blade between his palms, and Kaladin arrives again to knock himself and Seth away from Dalinar. Seth sees Kaladin heal his dead arm, and Kaladin tells Seth the Radiants are back. Seth flees. We get 4 interludes. In the first and fourth, Ashonai contemplates her upcoming meeting with Dalinar. During the high storm, a red spren breaks free and enters her. Ashonai shows her new form to her people and says that the Stormfather intends to help the humans over the Parshendi. Inside, Ashonai is horrified by what is happening. During the second, Zahil rejects Kaladin's ask to be trained and contemplates on how he misses the voice he used to hear in his head. In the third, a madman is brought to Dalinar who claims to be Taln, Herald of War. Dalinar says he has a plan for his shard blade. In part 3, Shallan enters the war camp and gets an audience with Dalinar and tells him and Navani of Jasnah's fate. After discussion, Dalinar lets Shallan and Adolin's betrothal stand. Shallan lies to get help from Sabriel, and he plays along. Dalinar states his intention to envoy with the Parshendi. Later, Shallan is contacted by the Ghostbloods. She impersonates Tin and tells them she will send an apprentice. Shallan lightweaves a disguise for herself, named Veil. She receives a mission to trail Amaram and learn his secrets. Shallan sneaks into Amaram's house. She learns that Amaram, and likely the Ghostbloods, are all interested in what Jasnah was researching. On the way out, Shallan sees Amaram's shard blade, and Shallan realizes that it is her brother Hilaran's shard blade, and she thinks that Amaram has killed him. In a flashback, we see Shallan trying to help her family. She speaks to Wit, who talks to her about symbols, and it makes Shallan think of twisted symbols and her mother's soul in a box. We also see, after Shallan intercedes to save her brother from her father's wrath, her father abusing another person in lieu of physically abusing Shallan, with him telling her that he would never hurt her, but wouldn't want to have to punish others because she has defied him. Kaladin reluctantly accepts Renarin as a member of Bridge 4, and also contemplates how to confront Moash about his potential involvement with the assassination attempt on Elhokar. Moash tells Kaladin to duel Amaram as a way to get justice. Kaladin brings some bridgemen to be taught by Zahil and learn shard blades. Syl is grateful that Kaladin does not touch the shard blade. During, Moash reveals that Elhokar and other Light Eyes killed his family. Moash wants Kaladin to meet with others he has been talking to, the ones trying to kill the king. Kaladin asks Moash to stop, but does agree to meet with the men. Syl is nervous. Moash and Kaladin leave to meet the people Moash was talking about, and it is Graves and Danlin who tell of their plot to kill Elhokar and install Dalinar as ruler. Kaladin hesitantly agrees in the meeting, but after tells Moash to stop and not meet with them anymore. Kaladin continues to try and train to walk on walls like Seth, and contemplates whether to tell Dalinar about the plot against Elhokar, which Syl has encouraged him to do. Shen tells Kaladin his real name, Rlain, and that he has to leave. Dalinar announces his intention to refound the Knights Radiant with Amaram as their leader. Kaladin is upset and thinks he must do something on his own if Dalinar won't take his claims seriously. During a high storm, another message is inscribed on the wall, and after a countdown says to seek the center. Navani thinks Dalinar is creating these messages while in a trance. Adolin is worried because telling the future is of the Voidbringers. Adolin goes to meet with Ashonai to protect Dalinar and is surprised by her demeanor change. Instead of surrendering, she says they will wipe them out and that they have killed Gavilar because of his plans with the Parshendi gods. Adolin fights another duel and wins. He sets up another duel, wagering 6 shards, and tells the prince he can choose whoever he wants to fight beside him. Adolin prepares for his duel and is surprised when 4, not 2, people show up to fight him, because of the way Adolin phrased his terms. The fight is difficult and Adolin is worried he will be seriously injured. Dalinar realizes Adolin can have the help of 2 others, but Elhokar refuses to give Dalinar his shard blade because he does not want Dalinar harmed. Renarin goes to help his brother. Adolin tries to yield, but is threatened against it. Dalinar asks the crowd for help, hoping for Amaram, who ignores him. Kaladin jumps in instead. Together, Kaladin and Adolin defeat the opponents. Adolin is offered a boon by Elhokar, and he asks to duel Sadeas. Kaladin also immediately asks for a boon and demands to challenge Amaram. Elhokar arrests Kaladin. Dalinar thanks Kaladin, but then scolds him for ruining their plans to trap Sadeas, since he has now found a way to delay the duel. He also says that there have been 17 witnesses for Amaram who are on his side. Kaladin tells Syl he will never trust a Light Eyes ever again. Sadeas is nervous about his narrow escape and plots to have Dalinar assassinated. We have 3 interludes. In the first, we meet Lift and her spren Wendell. Lift is an edge dancer with the unique ability to transform food into stormlight. Lift is thieving in the palace in Azir and is pursued by Nail. She escapes Nail by being pardoned by her friend Gox, after he is made Prime Aquasix for his miracle recovery, since Lift healed him of a wound to the neck with stormlight. In the second interlude, we see Seth contemplating how he was correct the entire time and never truthless. In the third, we see Ashonai convincing her people to attune to storm form, and segregating those who will not. The dissenters escape. In Part 4, Kaladin is in prison and continuing to question his trust in Dalinar, and decides that Elhokar is to blame for his family's misfortunes, and that he should join Moash's mission. After weeks, Kaladin is finally released and discovers that Adolin refused to leave prison until Kaladin was also released. The two reconcile, and Adolin says he believes Kaladin about Amaram. Adolin gives Kaladin a set of shards, which he gives to Moash. He tells Moash that he is ready to kill Elhokar, and hopefully after, get revenge on Amaram as well. After this, Kaladin increasingly finds it difficult to take in Stormlight, and is worried when he sees Syl acting more and more like a Windspren again. Shallan gets stronger in her light weaving abilities and continues to look for Urithiru. After another mission, she is accepted as a full member of the group and is instructed to get a ghost blood tattoo. In a flashback, Shallan's father becomes more violent and eventually orders her older brother's death. Shallan hatches a plan for one of her other brothers and stepmother to escape, and her stepmother questions if once they are gone, her father will finally hurt Shallan, the one who actually deserves it. Her father discovers their escape plan and kills her stepmother, and attempts to kill her brother. Shallan kills her father instead. Dalinar and Navani talk about grief over Jasna, and Navani questions Dalinar about his wife, whose name he can't remember. At a feast, there is an attempt to embarrass Dalinar by releasing his visions, but Dalinar owns up to them and is not embarrassed. Wit tries to explain that Dalinar is the type of leader they need, but that he cannot help him because their goals do not always align, and he is afraid of angering the father of hatred. On an expedition to the plains to test Navani's new mechanical bridge and so that Shallan can sketch gem hearts, an assassination attempt is made on Dalinar and Adolin. Kaladin saves them, but isn't in time to save himself and Shallan, who fall into the chasms. As he falls, he absorbs a bit of stormlight, but hears Syl screaming. Shallan and Kaladin try to make their way back to the war camps in the bottom of the chasms. Shallan maps the plains and helps them get on the right track. They are chased by a chasm fiend. Shallan gives Kaladin her shardblade to fight the chasm fiend and he wins, although he realizes he can no longer use stormlight. Shallan uses her shardblade to cut a hole for them to hide, protecting them from the coming high storm. While telling each other of their past, Kaladin realizes that he is the one who killed Shallan's brother on the field. Kaladin gets a vision during the storm of the Stormfather, who tells him he has killed Syl. Kaladin and Shallan return where Bridge 4 was holding a vigil for him. Dalinar asks Kaladin if he's what he's been looking for, and Kaladin says he used to be. Dalinar asks Shallan to go on an expedition with them to the center of the plains, and Shallan believes they might find Urithiru. We have 3 interludes. In the first, a new Ardent arrives in Kholinar and is encouraged not to be too hard on Queen Asudon. Despite this, the Ardent publicly humiliates the queen for how undevout she is, and is thus summarily executed. In the second, Ishonai continues to ignore screaming from within her, and says they should surprise the Alethi with a storm coming from the wrong direction. In the third interlude, we find out that Taravangian has seen the Night Watcher, and because of that, wakes up each day with a different level of intelligence. We are introduced to the diagram, something Taravangian created on his most intelligent day that is a grand plan to save his people. Seth returns to confront Taravangian about Kaladin, and Taravangian convinces him Kaladin must have an honor blade. Privately, he says they must keep Seth away from Kaladin in order to not lose access to their assassin. In Part 5, on the way to march to war, Dalinar reveals his plan to test Amaram's claims, and that he has proven Kaladin's accusations are correct. Dalinar forces Amaram to apologize and then leave. Kaladin realizes that Dalinar has left Moash behind to guard Elhokar. Kaladin is ordered back to bed to rest. Moash visits him and tells him the plan to kill Elhokar is all set up and that Kaladin won't be needed. Kaladin feels helpless to stop it. Elhokar visits Kaladin and apologizes and admits he knows he is a bad king. Kaladin recognizes that Elhokar is Dalinar's Tien. Shallan reveals to Dalinar that Jasnah was a Radiant and that she herself is also Radiant. She suggests that Dalinar doesn't need to refound them, but perhaps just gather the Radiance. R'lain comes to surrender to Dalinar and tells them that the old gods have returned, transforming his people. The fight begins and red spren are seen among the Parshendi. Shallan travels to the center plane, which she is convinced must be the key to Urithiru. Pattern tells Shallan that the Everstorm is coming, and will meet the High Storm in the middle for an extra destructive storm. Adolin kills Ashonai. Kaladin goes to the palace to save Elhokar and is confronted by Moash and Graves and Shardplate. Kaladin fights them, but without Stormlight, loses. He thinks the words, "I will protect even those I hate, so long as it is right." Syl comes back, claiming him, and his powers return, with Syl able to become a Shardblade. Moash and Graves flee. Seth appears and attacks Dalinar, killing a High Prince and many soldiers. Just as he is about to finish off Dalinar, Kaladin arrives. Kaladin and Seth fight in the High Storm, and Kaladin eventually bests him, but does not outright kill him, rather watching him fall to the earth and presuming him dead. Seth realizes for certain that he was never truthless and could have stopped assassinating everyone at any time. Shallan figures out how to work the Oathgate and transports Dalinar and all his armies to Urithiru. Syl and Kaladin talk, and Kaladin learns about honor blades and how they are different. Syl also says that shard blades are dead spren. Kaladin discovers that other members of Bridge 4 are using Stormlight as a byproduct of him becoming a Radiant. In the war camps, Moash reflects on trying to kill Kaladin. He feels remorse and as if he has been played, but stays with Graves anyway as he talks of the diagram. Back in Urithiru, Shallan is confronted by Mraize of the Ghostbloods and is told that he has her brothers, but he will give her time to decide if she wants to fully join or not. Pattern helps Shallan to admit a truth to further her Radiant journey, which is the reveal that she killed her mother in self-defense. Amran takes Taln and reflects that Gavilar's and the Sons of Honor's goal was completed. Seth is awoken, healed, and wonders how he did not die, and recognizes that he was saved by Nael, Herald of Justice. Nael wants to train Seth to be a Skybreaker, and gives him a sentient sword that asks, "Would you like to destroy some evil today?" Adolin confronts Sadeas, who is spreading more lies, and says that he will win no matter what. Adolin kills Sadeas. Dalinar bonds the Stormfather and enters the Order of the Bondsmiths. Renarin reveals that he is also a Radiant and a Truth Watcher. Kaladin is granted his request to go back and warn his parents of what is coming. In the epilogue, Jasnah appears from the cognitive realm to find Wit waiting for her. And that is the end of Words of Radiance. Book 3, Oathbringer. We once again see Gavilar's death, but this time from Ashonai's perspective. She meets with Gavilar, who gives her a dark, glowing sphere containing one of their gods, and says the world needs a major conflict. The Council of Five decides they will kill the king, and Ashonai weeps. In Part 1, Dalinar revisits visions and sees that something worse will come after the Everstorm that will cause destruction. Dalinar is frustrated that his desire to unite them has not come to fruition. Dalinar is informed that Sadeas has been murdered. Dalinar and Navani have the Stormfather marry them despite the fact that Ardents disapprove. Dalinar also admits to Navani that because of his visit to the Night Watcher, he cannot remember his deceased wife's name. Dalinar faces rejection from all the monarchs he attempts to gain to his cause. Elhokar attempts to abdicate, but instead they decide to make Dalinar king of Urithiru and have him give up Alethkar to his heir. Elhokar decides to go to the aid of Kholinar, which is in revolt, and Dalinar tells him to take Kaladin, and tells them that while there they should try to activate the Oathgate. Taravangian reaches out and says he agrees with Dalinar and wants to meet. At one point, while sparring in a friendly match, Dalinar realizes that he can hear his wife's name, Evie. He cannot remember what he asked of the Night Watcher or why memories are coming back now. Taravangian and other monarchs arrive, and Dalinar realize that they all just expect him to attack because of who he used to be. In flashbacks, we see a 34-year younger Dalinar as he fights his brother's fights and feels the thrill intensely. During one fight, he kills the Lord of the Rift as well as his small son, the heir. During another, he is so taken by the thrill he kills some of his own soldiers and almost kills Gavilar. Gavilar reflects that they need to somehow create a government instead of just killing and pillaging for control. Dalinar agrees to marry Evie from Rhaenyra for political reasons. Kaladin has a tearful reunion with his parents who thought he was dead. Despite the fact that his parents say Roshone has softened, Kaladin punches him and says it's for Moash. He meets his new baby brother Orodin. Kaladin's father, Lirin, expresses displeasure that Kaladin is a soldier and not a healer. He also discovers that the Parshmen all left but did not attack. He decides to investigate further. He finds a group of Parshmen and is caught and decides to surrender. He gains their trust and begins to help them, but is worried about how much he sympathizes with them. There is also a yellow void sprung that orders them about, and talks to Kaladin about joining up with the Parshmen. Eventually, Kaladin is forced to reveal his powers and he fights several fused. He travels back to Erythru. Shallan and Dalinar agree that they must focus on securing other oath gates. During their meeting, another murder is discovered. The murder was done in the exact same way as Sadeas's, which shocks Adolin, because he wasn't involved. Dalinar puts Adolin in charge of discovering the murderer. Shallan creates a new persona, Brightness Radiant, and Adolin teaches her how to use the Shard Blade. Later, Shallan becomes Veil and while looking out for information, finds out there has been multiple copycat murders. While investigating the murder with Adolin and Sadeas's wife, Ilali, Mraize gives Shallan a mission to wipe out the darkness in Erythru. Later, Adolin reveals to Shallan that it's actually Kaladin who killed her brother on the battlefield, not Amaram, when Amaram is named the new High Prince of Sadeas's princedom. Shallan collects information about copycat killers and ends up trailing one of the Unmaids with Adolin into an old, decaying library. Adolin and Bridge 4 members confront the Unmaid, who Rhaenyra identifies as Risha Pyr, or the Midnight Mother. They are rebuffed, and Shallan touches the Spren. They come to know each other, and the Midnight Mother attempts to bond her in place of Pattern, but Shallan also realizes that the Midnight Mother is afraid of being trapped by another Lightweaver, and Shallan is able to cause Risha Pyr to flee. Later, while recovering, Jasna Kholin reveals that she is still alive and has arrived at Erythru. We have 3 interludes. In the first, we meet Puli, a lighthouse keeper who is excited about the new storms being in the wrong direction. In the second, we meet Alista, who is working on translating the Dawn Chant. In the third, we see from Venli, who is taking orders from a void spren named Ulim. They find Ashonai dead, and Venli mourns, and also sees a small spren that looks like a ball of light. In part 2, Shallan finds it difficult to re-enter her trainee role under Jasna. She receives a message from Rhaze about the 2 groups dealing with the Voidbringers, the Sons of Honor led by Gavilar and Amaram, which wanted to bring the Desolations to restore power to the Vorin Church, and the Skybreakers led by Nail, to hunt down and kill any potential Radiance, in hopes it would stop the Desolations. Shallan decides to convince Elhokar to take her with them to Kholinar. Dalinar realizes he can take people into his vision and tries with different monarchs and is sometimes successful with this new method of convincing people to join him. In another vision, the Stormfather explains the Oath Pact to Dalinar. The Voidbringers were given power by Odium, so when they were killed, they were reborn into the bodies of the Parshmen. Because of this, humans could never defeat them, so Honor created the Oath Pact with 10 heralds. After each desolation, they would return to damnation and hold back the spirits of the dead. This was torture, and eventually a herald would break their oath, and a desolation would begin again. In the last desolation, 9 of the heralds survived, and they walked away from their pact, and hoped the dead herald, Taln, would not break. The last desolation was 4,500 years ago. In another vision, Dalinar witnesses the Recreants, where Radiance abandoned their shards and killed their spren. In this vision, Odium appears. He reveals his true, horrifying nature, and also rejects Dalinar's offer for a contest of champions. Lift, somehow unaffected by the rules of these visions, also appears. In flashbacks, we see Evie trying to convince Dalinar to be more peaceful, as she is a peaceful person herself. It is discovered that Dalinar actually spared the heir of the rift, and now he has grown and is rebelling. Dalinar is excited to take care of the problem, but Gavilar wants to attempt diplomacy instead. Gavilar sends Dalinar to fight other battles for years, to the point where Dalinar barely knows his son. Evie ends up joining him on campaign, and he is conflicted about it. Kaladin trains Bridge 4 to become Windrunners. Renarin and R'hllane bond over feeling different. Rock's family appears and tells him that something is really wrong back at their home. We also see Teft struggling with addiction and self-loathing. We see Moash, who decides to join the Fused after successfully fighting them. Renarin thinks Erythru is one large Fabrial, and also discovers that the library actually held all its information preserved in gems. We have 3 interludes. In the first, we meet Kaza, a part of a crew that is trying to reach an island. Their plans are foiled by the Sleepless. In the second, we see an intelligent day for Taravangian, in which he reorganizes the diagram and decides that they should support Dalinar now, just to topple him later. He believes they cannot defeat Odium and that they should simply save what they can. In the last, Venli and others are led by Ulim into the storm to become fused. However, when a corrupted spren tries to enter Venli, she hears another voice stop it and claim Venli as her own. In part 3, Dalinar finally convinces Queen Fen to join them as Dalinar heals the stones and buildings with his new power, and once again hears the command to unite them. He meets with the Azish, who also agree. In flashbacks, we see Dalinar being asked to take care of the rebellion at the Rift, and Evie being distraught over the fact that Dalinar is not being a good father to their sons, and that he never wants to return to Kholinar to settle. At the rift, a trap ensnares Dalinar and his troops, enraging Dalinar. Sadeas and Dalinar decide the rift must be punished and plan to burn it to the ground, but Evie begs him to reconsider. The next day, Dalinar and Sadeas shoot any messengers begging for mercy. He personally burns the palace and safe room. Tanlan, the heir, begs for the lives of his family, but Dalinar refuses and says he is glad he set the safe room on fire. As Dalinar kills Tanlan, he reveals that they had captured Evie and put her in the safe room, meaning that Dalinar has burned his own wife to death. Kaladin, Elhokar, Shallan, and members of Bridge 4 fly to Kholinar, where something feels off. They decide to sneak in instead of announcing themselves. Syl notices that the spren manifesting in the city are odiums. Shallan, disguised, goes to try and deliver a message to Queen Azudon from Elhokar and is stabbed. She feigns death and sees an unmaid in a mirror that looks in surprise at her. After being dumped, she escapes and returns to the group. The group heads out to collect information from various sources in the city. Shallan meets with Wit, who tells her an unmaid known as the Heart of the Revel is in the palace, and advises her to get the attention of the Cult of Moments. She finally succeeds and is invited to a feast at the palace. She realizes that there are two unmade in the city, Ashur-Tamarn, Heart of the Revel, and Sajah Anat, the Taker of Secrets. During a cult meeting, she sees that Ashur-Tamarn has taken over the Oathgate. She sees her shadow pointing the wrong direction and hears a voice warning her of a trap. She flees after hearing the sound of an incoming attack. Kaladin joins the City Watch under Azure to get more information. After a fierce attack by the Fused, he is forced to reveal himself as a Radiant. He reveals their plan to get the Oathgate, and they in turn reveal how they've been soulcasting without attracting attention of Yellow Spren. They've used a medal that Wit told them about. The group assaults the palace. Elhokar, Kaladin, Azure, Adolin, and members of Bridge 4 go to save Elhokar's family. Shallan goes to defeat the Unmade blocking the Oathgate. Elhokar finds Azudon reveling, and that she has bonded an evil spren. He takes his son and runs while she calls for the attack. Kaladin is frozen as he realizes he has friends on both sides of this fight, and is horrified to see them dying. He sees Elhokar holding his son and a heroic drawing Shallan made of him, beginning to say the first oath of the Radiance, before Moash comes in and kills him. Moash gives Kaladin the Bridge 4 salute before leaving. Shallan confronts the Unmade, but is almost swept away and defeated before Sajah Anat appears, introducing herself, and claiming that she is no longer of Odium and wishes to help. She tells Shallan not to activate the Oathgate. It's a trap. Adolin realizes the city is lost and tells Shallan to activate the Oathgate to get them out of there. Sajah Anat tells her she will try not to kill them. They are all transported to Shadesmar, where they are now trapped. There are 5 interludes. In the 1st, 3rd, and 5th, we see Venli teaching what she views as propaganda to gathered singers, and also recognizes that the new spren that hangs around her is causing her to attune to the old rhythms, not the new ones. She names this spren Timber, and Timber tells Venli to resist Odium. After a terrifying vision during a high storm, Venli says Timber has the wrong sister and she cannot resist Odium. In the 2nd, we meet Mem, an employee of Mraize. Her wash girl, Palm, turns out to be the herald Shalash, bent on destroying any images of herself. In the 4th, we meet a criminal Shalur, facing justice. In Part 4, Navani conducts the first meeting of the Coalition, assigning every kingdom a role based on its strengths. While in Vedinar, Dalinar is haunted once again by the Thrill and must flee for fear of giving into it again. He forces the Stormfather into a semblance of a blade to work the Oathgate and transport himself away from the Thrill. In a vision, he meets Venli, whom Odium has brought here, and tries to determine a truce. Odium shows up and destroys the vision, showing his power. Back in a meeting with the Coalition, a diplomatic attack has information revealed that destroys it. The humans were actually the Voidbringers, arriving in Roshar and destroying the Parshmen, eventually causing the Recreants. Additionally, information is leaked about Dalinar being High King and that he has kept his visions of Odium secret. The Stormfather reveals that the Radiants broke their oaths because when they found out the truth, they were worried Surge Binding would destroy Roshar as it had their original home, Ashen. Despite the fledgling coalition, Dalinar realizes that Jah Keved will be attacked and rallies people to help. In flashbacks, we see Dalinar for years turn to drinking excessively to numb the pain of what he has done to Evie. At his brother's funeral, we see Dalinar's first encounter with the Way of Kings, and his plan to seek the old magic like Evie had suggested. Seth begins training to become a Skybreaker, which he hopes to finish so he can go back to Shinover to deliver justice. He succeeds at his first tasks. He then travels with Nail, who tells him he must soon swear the third ideal. In Shadesmar, Kaladin broods over his failures. Adolin is surprised to see Maya, the dead spren of his Shardblade. They realize they must get to the Perpendicularity to escape. However, the Perpendicularities are guarded by Void Spren and Fused, so many are unwilling to help them get there. Syl, by revealing herself, and the fact that the Honor Spren are looking for her, gained them passage, though she is locked up. On the ship, Azira plans to follow her own goals that she's had for a while of finding her bounty, a man and a black smoking sword, which is revealed to be Sahil, the swordmaster. Adeline comforts Shallan as she struggles with her identity and also admits that he killed Sadeas. As they get closer to their destination, Fused are spotted. They escape, and Kaladin convinces everyone to go to Thaylen City, where he is convinced Dalinar is in trouble. They reach the Oathgate and see that the Oathgate's Spren are not corrupted. However, it is guarded by an army of the enemy. We have 3 interludes. In the first, Venli is required to sail towards the coming assault. In the second, we see Risen working in the Gemstone Reserve with her pet Larkin, Chiri Chiri. Her old Baps comes in to do an audit and gives her the captain's cord to the Wandersail. While doing the audit, a guard stabs a worker and attempts to steal the giant ruby kept there. With Chiri Chiri's help, Risen stops the thief, who turns out to be a Lightweaver Fused. In the third, we see Tef's Spren attempting to get him to say the oaths. Tef discovers that the bridgemen guarding the Honor Blade are wounded or dead, and realizes the person who did it was dressed in a bridge fort coat that he had sold for fire moss. Part 5 starts with flashbacks. In them, we see Dalinar make it to the Night Watcher. She is unable to understand his request for forgiveness, and eventually Cultivation herself appears. She offers to prune Dalinar's memory so he will no longer remember Evie. Dalinar accepts and leaves, requesting a copy of the Way of Kings on the way out of port. Jasnah goes to Renarin, who is kneeling in a temple, with a Spren that is not a Truthwatcher Spren. Renarin can see the future and has seen many in front of him, including Jasnah striking him down and Dalinar becoming Odium's champion. Jasnah almost strikes him down, but instead gives him a hug. Venli is with other listeners who do not want to fight against their old homes, but the Fused force them to. Odium arrives to fight in the battle, and Venli must translate for him. Dalinar watches as listeners arrive through the Kholinar Oathgate to attack the city. A red force, the Thrill, comes and enters Amaram's forces, and instead of defending the city, they begin to attack it. Seth watches the battle, disturbed by Amaram's army changing sides, even though Nail says it's the right choice. Sword Nimi helps Seth realize that he does have a choice, that even his Oathstone was only a rock all along. He asks Nail if he can follow a person instead of the law. Lift appears to help Dalinar, and he asks her to attempt to get the ruby that Risen protected back, as Odium wants it. Seth comes to help Lift because he wants to follow Dalinar. Kaladin approaches the Fused guarding the gate and attacks, reflecting that his life has been difficult, but he now has a purpose. Shallan attempts to convince the Oathgate Spren to let them pass, but they say honor has forbidden it. The Fused attacked Adeline, and Maya savagely protects him from getting killed. Kaladin runs out of Stormlight, and many of their party are wounded. It feels impossible, but still encourages Kaladin to say the words. He collapses. He is unable to say them. Dalinar confronts Odium and asks for a contest of champions. He assumes Amaram will be his opponent, but instead, Odium chooses Dalinar and the Thrill rushes into him. Odium tries to convince Dalinar to give his pain up, to give it to Odium. Despite the pain and loneliness, Dalinar resists, saying, "You cannot have my pain," and swears the next oath to the Stormfather. In his mind, he hears unite them and grasps all 3 realms and combines them together. Light explodes, creating Honor's perpendicularity. Adeline, Shallan, and Kaladin are able to emerge from Shadesmar and join the fight. Teft finally swears the oaths, swearing to protect those he hates, even when the one he hates most is himself. Dalinar goes to confront the Thrill head-on. Lift, having finally gotten the red gemstone, hands it to Dalinar, who uses it to trap the Thrill. Kaladin confronts Amaran, who is slowly transforming. He eventually incapacitates him, while other Fused come to stop him from helping Dalinar. Once Dalinar traps the Thrill, Amaran gets up and almost kills Kaladin, but Rock kills Amaram. Shallan goes to fight with a light-weaved army. Venli speaks the words of the first ideal to Timber. Adeline, after focusing on his connection with Maya, is able to call his Shardblade 3 seconds earlier. Renarin attempts to open the Oathgate, and instead it erupts with light, and Teft comes through it, leading Alethi troops. The combined reinforcements, along with trapping the Thrill, causes the Fused army to retreat. Then we have a few things that are wrapped up at the end of the book for our characters. Seth swears his 3rd ideal to follow Dalinar Kholin, and then begins his 4th ideal to cleanse the Shin of their false leaders. Moash, given instructions from a Fused, permanently kills the herald Jezra. Ash immediately falls unconscious, recognizing that her father has been killed. Moash is given a new name, Vyre, and is also given Jez's honor blade. Shallan struggles to gain control of her 3 identities, but does commit to her betrothal to Adeline and says her other personalities will not chase after Kaladin. Later, while Shallan awaits her wedding to Adeline, her 3 remaining brothers come in and reveal a message from Rayz. Her debt is paid, and they will need her help with Shaja Anat. Kaladin, while flying, finds Dre and Scar, who have saved Elhokar's son, Gavinor. Taravangian reveals to Dalinar of his plan to undermine him. Later, Odium confronts Taravangian, and he strikes a deal to protect everyone born in Kharbranth as well as their spouses. Adeline and Dalinar argue over who should be king. Dalinar thinks Gavinar is too young, but Adeline doesn't want it, and so he reveals he was the one to kill Sadeas. In the end, it is decided that Jasnah will rule. Dalinar begins to learn to read and write, and in the ending scene, we see him beginning to write his own book, Oathbringer. In the epilogue, Wit enters the Kholinar Palace and rescues a cryptic spren, seemingly the one that was about to bond Elhokar, and swears the first ideal. And that is the end of Oathbringer. And now, Rhythm of War. In the prologue, we see Gavilar's death from Navani's perspective. Navani hears him speaking with men she doesn't know and sees strange spheres. After, they fight, and Navani burns a glyphword reading death, gift, death. When she sees Gavilar's body, she prays that her glyphword wasn't the reason. In part 1, we see Lirin, Kaladin's father, in an occupied city helping refugees. Kaladin is on the run from the Fused, and Lirin would like to find him. When a Fused comes, Kaladin reveals himself as pretending to be a refugee. He fights the Fused, who is extremely skilled at fighting Surgebinders. He is there to evacuate the town with the aid of a flying Fabrial platform that Navani has helped develop. While evacuating, an attack comes, and Kaladin fights with the Fused, Lushi, in which they show mutual respect for each other. Kaladin fights to save Hearthstone and finds Moash, who has killed Rashon, and he tells Kaladin that the people he loves will continue to die, and the only way to stop it is to kill himself. Renarin comes and shows Moash a light-weaved version of him as radiant and loved, and Moash screams and flees, asking for the pain to be taken away. Syl, Teft, Adolin, and others are worried about Kaladin's depression. Dalinar relieves Kaladin of duty, similarly worried about him. Kaladin shows his family the rooms prepared for them at Urithiru, with plenty of healing supplies. Kaladin also informs Lirin of his retirement from fighting and his desire to join him as a surgeon. Rock informs Kaladin that he must travel home to face punishment for lifting a weapon. Navani receives a message to stop trapping Spren and Fabrials, as it causes too much pain. Navani is also studying the difference between her sphere of voidlight and the sphere Seth has from Gavilar. Everyone agrees there is some wrongness to the sphere and that it is different than regular voidlight. Navani is also heading research on other Fabrials to help ease life in Urithiru. Shallan has been trying to get inducted into the Sons of Honor and is finally successful. She is taken to see Lalai, Sidaeus' wife, where Vale intends to assassinate her. However, Lalai is killed by someone else before Shallan gets to it, and she later finds out that it was the Ghostbloods. Shallan receives a message from Saja Anat that the Unmade is sending more corrupted Spren to the tower, and then speaks with Mraize about getting a new job to find Restairs in Lasting Integrity, a Spren city. He also tells her the Ghostblood's main goal is to learn how to take Stormlight off of Roshar, and that they are searching for Bo Adro Mishram, one of the Unmade. Venli is trying to plan an escape from the Fused. Rabbi Anel, another Fused, proposes to take over Urithiru. Lushi sends Venli to work for Rabbi Anel and spy on her. We have 3 interludes. In the first, we hear from Syl, who is extremely worried about Kaladin and seeks to understand him more. In the second, we hear from Saja Anat, who reflects that she can only keep a few secrets from Odium, and she sends more corrupted Spren to Urithiru and some Spren to follow Mraize. In the third, Taravangian reveals he will turn on the Coalition and have his armies betray them, and declares the diagram to be finished. He reflects that saving one city was all he could have done. In part 2, we see Shallan struggling to keep control of her different personas, and in preparation for her mission with Adolin into Shadesmar, she is given a cube to communicate with Mraize. Before their mission, Adolin and Dalinar fight over Sidaeus' and Evie's deaths. In Shadesmar, Adolin continues to connect with Maya, and Shallan notices someone has used her cube. A spy is among them. Shallan discovers Beryl is the spy, but starts becoming easily overwhelmed by situations and begins hiding within herself, forcing her other personas to take over. Vale recognizes that Adolin helps Shallan and that she needs him nearby. While on shore at a city, Maya brings another Deadeye, a cryptic, to Adolin's attention, and he's disturbed to realize that this Spren was killed recently. He also discusses with various Spren on how to approach the Honor Spren, and intervenes on an attack against their ship's captain, where Maya comes to help with her own sword. Shallan realizes Beryl is not actually the spy, but Pattern, and is disturbed when she recognizes Pattern lying to her about her childhood. The group reaches Lasting Integrity, where the Honor Spren refuse to engage with Adolin. Desperate, he says he is here for judgment for the Recreants. He is allowed to take Shallan, Pattern, and Maya with him into the city. Teft steps down in order to stay with Kaladin. After seeing the way others are caring for those with mental illness, Kaladin wants to help change and improve their conditions and set up therapy sessions. The mysterious person contacts Navani again and reveals that they are also a Spren, and asks her again to stop her Fabrial creations. They recognize that the message is coming from inside of Urithiru. An explosion happens, killing the 2 researchers working on Gavilar's dark sphere. Venli and the Fused arrive. They realize the sibling, the Spren that controls the tower, is asleep, and many of the systems run by her are not active in Urithiru. Rabbanael channels Voidlight into the center gem pillar, turning the defenses against the Radiance. Urithiru is under siege. Venli discovers that Rabbanael's desire is to learn from the humans and partner with them in order to end the war. When the pillar is taken over, Teft collapses. Kaladin discovers that most of the Radiants in the tower have collapsed, and Kaladin seems to be the only Radiant that is conscious. The Spren communicating with Navani reveals themselves to be the sibling. The sibling agrees to help Navani prevent the takeover of the tower. Navani realizes Moash is helping the Fused enter the tower by the way of Oathgate. Navani surrenders to Rabbi Nael, who is impressed with her work and asks her to collaborate on fabrials. Regular individuals will be able to continue working safely in Urithru, but all Radiance must be delivered to the Fused. Kaladin, distraught at the idea of them taking Teft, brutally fights a Fused for him, causing Liren to get angry and tell Kaladin he has turned into a monster. Kaladin takes Teft and leaves. We get 3 interludes. In the first, Odium tasks Vyre with helping him destroy Kaladin. Odium wants to use and change Kaladin like he did with Vyre, and Vyre briefly thinks that it would be better for Kaladin to die. In the second, Lift, still awake because of cultivation, realizes she has some limited access to her powers. She manages to push through and barely heal someone, but her abrasion powers are completely gone. Moraes appears to hunt her. In the third, Taravangian, while speaking with Odium, realizes that neither of them can see Renarin's future or the future of those close to him. He also sees Odium's fear of Seth and his sword, and sees a way that Odium could be defeated. In part 3, Kaladin finds a hidden room with the help of the sibling and carries Teft there. He is overcome with his sadness, and realizes that Syl is grieving too over the loss of her old Radiant. Dalinar, using his abilities, somehow has connected her to her past. In her collaboration with Rabbi Anel, Navani learns about how Spren are actually Infabrials, and that Void Spren won't sacrifice themselves to do that. The sibling helps Navani reluctantly, unwilling to be bonded again. She was injured when the humans bound Boadro Mishram. With the siblings' help, Navani and Kaladin can communicate. Kaladin, without his full powers, must go fight some Fused in order to stop them from corrupting another of the siblings' nodes, which he accomplishes by destroying it. Rabbi Anel tells him to flee. Navani finds a way to deliver a glove Fabrial to Kaladin as a substitute for him not being able to use his full powers. Rabbi Anel and Navani discover a sphere filled with Tower Light, a combination of Stormlight and Lifelight. They wonder if they can ever mix Voidlight and Stormlight and begin experimenting. Navani also meets Isu, Rabbi Anel's daughter, who has gone insane from repeatedly being reborn as a Fused. Venli, who hears things through other singers, tells Lucy that the Pursuer has taken Kaladin's family into custody to be executed. Lucy takes his family under her protection. Venli also puts her group in charge of the unconscious Radiance, and requests Liren's help to care for them. Venli convinces them to let Rlain be in her care, and she also witnesses Moraes give Lift in a cage to Rabbi Anel as a gift. He reveals that Lift uses Lifelight, not Stormlight. Venli begins to experiment with her power and to attract other Spren who want to bond her squires. In a confrontation with Nael, Dalinar touches him, and because of his power of connection, he can see the Oath Pact. He sees that 8 are weak, 1 is powerful, and 1 is broken. Dalinar hopes to use his powers to reinstate the Oath Pact. Renarin tells Dalinar of another of his visions and speculates that Odium will delay indefinitely. He also requests that more people be allowed to bond corrupted Spren. Navani tells Kaladin to intercept another node being turned, and then realizes that it's a trap. Kaladin fights the Pursuer and then Lucy, pretending to have his full power while actually just using the Fabrial. He's able to destroy the node, but ends up stuck outside the tower in a high storm. Dalinar, while riding the storm, is able to help Kaladin and push him back into the tower. In flashbacks, we see a Shonai meeting with humans, one of which is Gavilar. Another of the party, Axendweth, gives Venli a gemstone and tells her that they could accomplish more with more powerful forms. Venli breaks it, and the Spren lives inside her, speaking of Shadesmar and a new storm. By accident, Shonai and others also take this new war form. We get 3 interludes. In the first, Seth Spren tells him he needs to progress along his ideals. In the second, Chiri Chiri manages to talk to Risen, and overhears a conversation about Dawn Shards. In the third, Taravangian wakes on a dumb day and tells Seth that Odium fears Nightblood, that his father is dead, and that he must give Nightblood to Dalinar. In part 4, Liren doesn't want fighting to break out and is angered by those wearing Kaladin's sash brand in honor of him. He refuses to promise that he won't turn Kaladin in. Dabbit finds Rlain and tells him Kaladin won't wake up. Kaladin is currently stuck in a nightmare of Odium's making. With Venli's help, Rlain and Dabbit help Lift escape to heal Kaladin. She also heals Teft. Navani and Rabbi Anel realize that the lights have a tone and a rhythm, and working together manage to combine Voidlight and Stormlight, calling it the Rhythm of War. Navani realizes that Gavilar wanted this since it may be capable of killing a god. Eventually, Navani succeeds at making anti-Void Light. Rabbi Anel attempts to mix it with Void Light, causing an explosion. She survives, then uses another anti-Void Light sphere to kill her daughter, permanently ending the cycle of rebirth. Rabbi Anel says her goal is to end the war by killing Spren so there can be no more bonds. In Shadesmar, Pattern reveals that he had to just play along with Shallan's pretense that she had never met him before on Jasna's boat. In reality, Shallan had already sworn oaths. He brings a Deadeye for her to meet. Adolin prepares for his trial and finds out the judge is a herald, Kalek. Kalek tells Adolin that the trial is more important than just him. The Honor Spren may choose to bond with Fused depending on the outcome. The trial begins. Shallan realizes Rastares, who she's been sent to find, is Kelek, and Moraes tells her to kill him and impersonate him, ruling in Adolin's favor. After the trial, Vale and Radiant decide that they shouldn't do this plan, but that causes Formless, a new persona, to take over Shallan. Shallan battles internally with Radiant and Vale as she goes to kill Kelek, and finally admits that she bonded a cryptic as a child, the Deadeye that they had found, named Testament. Eventually, Vale is integrated into Shallan as Kelek appears. Kalek is arrested by other Honor Spren for collusion with the enemy. With a new Honor Spren as judge, he brings Maya as a witness and attempts to say she is treated terribly. Maya speaks for the first time, defending the Knights Radiant and Adeline, and the Honor Spren are shocked to hear that the Spren chose with their knights to abandon the oaths. Adeline is free to go. In flashbacks, Venli discovers from Ulim that Odium's forces are stuck on Braze, and so Ba-Ado Mishram became connected to the Singers so they could start the war without those forces. A meeting with Nael, and with the encouragement of Ulim, convinces Venli that they need to use Seth to start a war with the humans to get the power that they need. As her people get more forms and the war with the humans progresses, Venli realizes that she has always been a coward and deserves no credit for anything that has ever happened. We get 3 interludes. In the first, we see Hasina, Kaladin's mother, who forces Liren to talk to Patience about why Kaladin means so much to them, as Liren still cannot accept his son's choices. In the second, we meet Aiden, someone who wants to become a Windrunner. He convinces his father to allow him to help watch over the Radiance in the tower. In the third, we see Taravangian on another dumb day. He contemplates how to accomplish his goals and talks to Saja Anat, who tells him she will help draw Odium to him. As we start part 5, I want to do a quick note here. A lot of things happen at once in this section, and it was getting too chaotic in the summary to say it perfectly in order. So I've grouped things by character, meaning we will progress in the story and then jump back, as things are obviously happening simultaneously. Wit advises Jasna, telling her that they must make sure Odium cannot win even if he is sure not to lose, and giving her his idea for a contract, saying that Race's weakness is that he wants to show off his intelligence. Moash comes to kill Navani, but Rabbi Anel intervenes and tells him to take care of Kaladin first. Later, after Moash has left to take care of Kaladin, he returns. Navani has set a trap for Rabbi Anel, but as they are talking, Moash stabs Navani. She flees, and Rabbi Anel tries to distract Moash. Navani asks the sibling to bond her, but the sibling says she is unworthy. Navani hums and attunes to the rhythm of the tower, and the sibling agrees to bond her as Moash reaches her. The sibling and her fill Urithru with tower light, collapsing the fused and waking the Radiance. Moash flees, his connection to Odium broken, allowing him to feel all of the pain he has given up. He jumps from the tower and is found later by the fused. He realizes he is now blind. The sibling tells Kaladin that the fused have found the final node and will kill the Radiance. Teft goes with Lift to the infirmary to save Radiance, and Kaladin confronts the pursuer. In the infirmary, Moash cuts through Lift's legs, then uses his anti-Stormlight dagger to kill Teft's Spren, and then his honor blade to kill Teft. As Kaladin causes the pursuer to flee, Moash drops Teft's body in front of Kaladin. He tells Kaladin he must either join Odium or kill himself. Kaladin is in a frenzy, and Syl tells him she has forgotten the words. He chases a fused holding his father to the roof, and when the fused throws his father from the tower, Kaladin jumps after. While Dalinar is flying to visit a herald, the Stormfather tells him that Kaladin has jumped from Urithru. Dalinar convinces the Stormfather to give Kaladin more time. Kaladin speaks with the Stormfather, telling him he has given up because he cannot say the next words and actually mean them. Dalinar makes a connection in the spiritual realm, giving Kaladin a vision. In the vision, Tien comforts Kaladin, gives him a carved wooden horse, and he sees Syl. He finally has a breakthrough and says the words, "I accept there will be those I cannot protect." Instead of hearing the Stormfather, he hears Dalinar accept his words. He now has his shard plate, and he lashes down quickly to save his father. Finally, Kaladin's sash glyph is beginning to heal. Venli reveals her status as a Radiant to Lucy. Lucy is happy and asks Timber about an old honor spren. Then they join in the fight against the pursuer. After winning, Rlain intervenes in a fight between the humans and the singers, and both sides trust him. A corrupted spren, Tumi, bonds Rlain. Later, when Venli finds a group of listeners on the Shattered Plains, she says her second ideal. Dalinar confronts Ishar, who thinks Dalinar is working for Odium. While fighting, Ishar almost steals his bond with the Stormfather before Seth uses Nightblood to collapse the perpendicularity. Nightblood is also able to chip Ishar's honor blade. In a moment of lucidity, Ishar asks Dalinar to come help him regain his sanity before fleeing. Entering Ishar's tent, they find his experiments. He seemingly has been able to pull Spren out from the cognitive realm and manifest them in the physical realm. They are all dead. Odium speaks with Dalinar, and they finally agree to the terms of a contest of champions, which will occur in 10 days. If Dalinar wins, Odium will remain bound to the system and stop attacking, and give up all his conquered land. If Odium wins, he will still remain bound to the system and stop attacking, but he will keep the land he has conquered, and Dalinar will become a fused. Navani finds Rabbi Anel still alive, who asks Navani to kill her with anti-void light, since she will come back as an insane fused. Navani accepts and tells her she will end the war. Taravangian wakes on the dumbest day he's ever had. Seth comes to confront him about what he knows of Ishar and his father, and Odium appears. In the scuffle, Seth kills Taravangian's body as Taravangian kills Race with Nightblood, allowing Taravangian to pick up Odium's shard and become Odium. Cultivation approaches. She says she wanted to prepare him for this and agrees to help teach him his powers. Taravangian thinks he can save them all. Shallan, with Veil now integrated, tells Murray she will not join the Ghostbloods and that he better vacate Urithiru. Dalinar asks Kaladin to go to Ishar and help him heal so that he can teach Dalinar more about Bondsmith powers. The Stormfather tells Dalinar he was right to show Kaladin mercy, and Dalinar encourages him, saying that he can change, and the Stormfather reveals that he has actually shown mercy in the past. In a flashback, we see Ashonai dying while Timber appears to her in a chasm. She gives in, attuning to the old rhythms as she dies. The Stormfather tells her she has died, but that he accepted her struggle with death as swearing the first ideal of the Radiance. He takes her in a high storm to pass over all of Roshar before she finally drifts away. In the epilogue, we see Wit with his bonded cryptic spren, Design. In a confrontation with Odium, Wit realizes that Odium is no longer race. Odium destroys some of Wit's breath, which hold his memories, and then repeats the interaction so that Wit no longer knows that Odium has changed hands. The only thing Wit notices is amiss is that he no longer has perfect pitch. And that is the end of Rhythm of War.
Thank you very much, Bookborn, but I'm probably going to have to disagree with you on this one. I don't know if I'd say Moash is my favorite character in all of fantasy and also my personal hero like you. For me, that honor would have to go to Cersei Lannister. Speaking of characters in fantasy, let's go ahead and take a little bit of time to check in with all the most important characters kicking around Stormlight and see where they're going in Book 5. Starting off, there's Kaladin Stormblessed. Over the course of the last few books, we've had to see him struggle with depression, PTSD, and having to deal with Shallan. But by the end of Rhythm of War, he seems to have really turned a page, realizing that it's not his responsibility to protect everyone and swearing his fourth ideal. He's well on the way to becoming a full 5th Oath Knight Radiant, and his goal for Wind and Truth seems to be to help Seth find Ishar all the way over in Shinovar. Who knows what that's going to entail. Now, I personally would be very surprised if we didn't see him swear his 5th Oath by the end of Book 5, but hey, anything could happen going forward, and some people, myself included, are predicting that he'll take up the Mantle of Honor, but that's a topic for another time. Next up, we have Dalinar. Over the course of this series, we've seen Dalinar's journey from ruthless warlord to a man focused on uniting nations, possibly with magic Dawn Shard powers, but definitely through the use of diplomacy and negotiation with, a little war thrown in for good measure. We've also seen him overcome his personal struggles, visiting the Night Watcher to ask for forgiveness and instead receiving a blessing from Cultivation herself, the full implications of which still have yet to be fully explored. We've also seen Dalinar successfully resist Odium's attempts to turn him through the use of the Thrill, the Unmade, which during the climax of Oathbringer he was able to successfully trap inside of a perfect gemstone. We've seen Dalinar bond the Stormfather, we've seen him confront the past, and we've seen him clash with Ishar. And possibly more significantly than anything else, he's managed to lock Odium into a contest of champions. There are absolutely world-defining stakes for this contest, and he's going to have to proceed with the utmost care if he's going to want to come out on top here. Lead Roshar past its cycle of desolations. But do keep in mind that if Dalinar loses this contest, he has agreed to surrender himself to Odium for once and all, becoming his general. So many interesting things can happen with Dalinar going forward, but no matter what, he is definitely going to be playing a very, very important role in this upcoming release. And then there's Shallan. Much like Kaladin, she seems to have really turned a significant page by the end of Rhythm of War, putting her identity of Veil behind her and moving on from the Ghostbloods as an organization. We have also seen her confront her own past, remembering that she grievously injured her previous spren named Testament. Now, Testament is still with her, though, and she's looking for some sort of way to revive it, but because of, reasons, it's probably going to entail finding Baero Mishram, another captured Unmade. That seems like where her character is headed in this final book, finding Mishram, setting them free, and fixing the connections that were broken when Mishram was trapped in the first place. Now, what happens to her other personality, named Radiant, is anyone's guess, but I would hazard that sometime in this next book, she's going to be figuring that out. She'll start finding a way to reconcile all of those different parts of herself, and with any luck, who knows? Maybe she finds a measure of peace. Adjacent to Shallan, we have her husband, Adolin. He appears to be on his own unique path to revive a spren, in this case his dead-eyed shardblade, Myalaran. They appear to be in the process of forming some sort of connection, and frankly, all bets are off if... Hi, kitty. And frankly, all bets are off if Mishram is freed. They could even theoretically start to form a hypothesized reverse Nahel bond, with the Spren being the knight, but we don't know if that's even really a thing. However, he does still have yet to answer for the murder of Sadeas all the way back at the end of Words of Radiance. Now, some think that this is a plot point that's simply been dropped, but I wouldn't be so sure. Either way, I'd make sure to keep an eye on Adolin and Maya and their relationship and bond during this upcoming release. There's definitely going to be some super cool stuff going on no matter what. Another Kholin to keep an eye on is Yasna, or as Bookborn calls her, Jasna. And Bookborn's not the only one. Actually, I'm rereading the books on audiobook right now, and at the very beginning of the series, Kate Redding definitely calls Yasna Jasna, so do not blame Bookborn for that one. It doesn't matter. Okay, either way, currently reigning as the queen in absentia of Alethkar, Yasna appears to be pretty far down the Radiant path. She's an Elscaller of, at the very least, the Fourth Order, having already earned her plate. Now, we don't know too much about the specifics of the Radiant Path. In fact, we've hardly gotten to spend any time at all with Yasna for the past, few books. Hopefully, this changes in Wind and Truth, but I would frankly not be surprised to find that a distinct air of mystery kind of remains around Yasna's character until the book that's slated to focus on her in the back 5 books, and it's likely going to be the last one, from what I understand. There is a lot to uncover about her past and her character in general. She remains one of the characters that I'm personally most interested in hearing about, and hopefully you're interested in hearing about Jasna as well. Someone we've been able to spend a significant amount of time with lately is Yasna's mother and the wife of Dalinar. That is, of course, going to be Navani Kholin, the second wife of Dalinar, not... Over the course of Rhythm of War, we got to spend quite a bit of time witnessing Navani going down the path of accepting herself and her nascent abilities as a scholar, and in the process unlocking the secrets of light, combinations of light, anti-light, and how they all sort of interact with each other. We were also able to witness her journey in reviving and ultimately forming a bond with the sibling that's going to be one of the 3 bondsmiths, Spren, and the beating heart of Urithiru. Together, they were able to restore Urithiru to its full functionality and together create Towerlight, which is itself a combination of Stormlight and Lifelight. Navani's path forward seems to be focused on keeping Urithiru alive and a generally safe place for the Knights Radiant, but there's a ton of aspects of the status quo that could be completely shaken up by the end of Wind and Truth, so who knows where she ends up at the end of all this. Navani's nephew, Renarin, is also in quite the interesting position. He is unique even among the Radiants, having formed a Radiant bond with a Spren previously enlightened, or however you say it, by the unmade Shah Anat. The full consequences of this bond do remain to be fully explored. After all, very few people seem to be even aware of Renarin's close proximity to powers so closely entwined to Odium. But being in the position does present some rather unique and novel opportunities. He apparently has access to all normal Truthwatcher surges and abilities, but his enlightened Spren Gliss also allows him to, access a surge not normally accessible by normal Truthwatchers. In fact, it's not even normally accessible to any form of Knights Radiant. It's a form of future sight, basically. Possibilities of the future appear to form around him as if refracted through panes of glass. And indeed, using this surge allows him to, predict things that may come to pass and therefore act accordingly. And the real interesting thing here is that this is an ability that the old vessel of Odium seems to have been completely unaware of. Speaking of Odium, we should probably check in on their new vessel. So as you may recall, during the climax of Rhythm of War, Odium's old vessel Race was slain by Taravangian while wielding Nightblood. And in the ensuing moments, Taravangian sees the opportunity presented to him, taking the power of a whole shard into himself and becoming the new vessel of Odium. Now, the new Ascension adds a whole new element to the power balance of Roshar, and it changes the very nature of the conflicts themselves. Like, what new ideas will Taravangian bring to the table? How will Odium's relationship with his subjects change going forward? Is this going to lead to a more cooperative era on Roshar, or further emphasize the divisions already there? Is it going to be a net positive for Roshar? Was this Cultivation's plan all along? There are so many incredibly important questions to be answered here, and they all have major implications for the series as a whole. So make sure to keep an eye on Taravangian, or I guess Odium, going forward, as, you know, they're going to be everywhere. And then there's Seth's son Villano, Truthless of Shinovar. Now, Seth has also gone through this whole journey, right? Starting Truthless, following whatever orders he was directed to, including like a ridiculous amount of political assassinations via Taravangian. And upon being resurrected by Nail and given Nightblood, which, by the way, those are both things that we're still waiting on deeper explanations for now that I mention it. But upon being resurrected and all that, Seth started down the path of the Skybreakers. He realized by this point that, hey, he was never actually truthless in the first place. So he swore to devote to a crusade of purging the Shin people that had cast him out and cursed him in the first place. Now, we don't really have any idea what this crusade is going to entail, but we're definitely going to find out going forward. Book 5 is going to be focused on Seth after all. We're going to get a ton of flashback chapters from him, all taking place in Shinovar, theoretically. And, you know, in the current time, he's going to be heading back to his homeland with Kaladin to, you know, start a mission there. Go find Ishar. Who knows what wacky adventures they're going to get up to. And he might even do a little bit of societal cleansing while he's out there. Who knows? We'll see if the mood strikes him. Lift is another character that has a super interesting path ahead of her, and it's not one that I'm expecting to have been played out fully by the end of Wind and Truth. Through the books, we've seen her progress in both oaths as well as maturity, the latter much to her chagrin. She doesn't want to grow up. She doesn't want to change, right? But it's very clear that despite her best efforts, she absolutely is. We're not 100% sure what Lift actually asked for when she visited Cultivation, but it seems to have been somewhat related to not growing up in some sort of fashion. Now, how that translates to Lift being able to turn food into lifelight is a different story, and one that who knows at this point. We also have yet to learn more about her bond with her cultivation spren, Windle, which seems to have hilariously been, like, somewhat out of his control. He's coming around to her, though. He's starting to like Lift. And while she definitely will have a role to play in Stormlight Book 5, I wouldn't expect to see too many answers until the book dedicated to her that we're going to get in the back 5 books. So we'll catch up with her again in, like, I don't know, 7 or 8 years, hopefully. See you then. On the other hand, I would very much expect to see a lot more from Venli this next book. She's one of the newer additions to the Knights Radiant, and she's the first Parshendi to fully swear oaths. She directly or indirectly played a very pivotal role in letting Odium back onto Roshar, as we saw play out during the course of Venli's flashbacks during Rhythm of War. The actions that Venli took part in with the weird human void spren thing named Ulim led directly to Eshonai's acceptance of the storm form, which led to the army of the Parshendi turned Voidbringers, which led to the summoning of the Everstorm and the return of both Desolations and Odium himself. And yeah, as a side note, we have no real clear idea of what Ulim's deal is, but I'd assume he's coming back at some point. We even saw him briefly in Rhythm of War. He was doing some, sneaky nonsense in the tower. Who knows what he's up to? Throughout the course of both Oathbringer and Rhythm of War, we saw Venli's growth as a person and eventually as a Radiant. In fact, the very first Parshendi in millennia, if not ever. As of the end of Rhythm of War, Venli is, at least in my humble opinion, solidly on the path of redemption, returning to her home with the listeners on the side of honor and bringing the potential Radiant Spren back to her people, as well as a few fused as well. Yeah, we saw them come with her at the end there. The full significance of all this has yet to be explored, but it is heavily implied that the Parshendi did something absolutely terrible in the past to drive the powerful Spren away, and this is a sort of renewal of friendship or something similar to that. Oh, and to cap it all off, the listeners are they're writing chasm fiends now, so we got that to look forward to. Adjacent to Venli, we have her sister Eshonai, who is now very dead. Seriously, stop speculating about Eshonai coming back alive. She's definitely the much cooler sister, but she is super, ultra dead. She got a super cool ending. Why do you want to bring her back? No, she's dead. Okay, we're going to very quickly check in with a few BFFs. And BFFs here meaning Bridge 4 founders, of course. First off, we have Bookborn's favorite character, Moash. Moash has had quite the arc going for the last few books, right? He's bounced from OG Bridge 4 founder to potential assassin of Elhokar to runaway to, actual assassin of Elhokar, and he's ended up as a full-fledged servant of Odium, trying to get Kaladin out of the way by, literally telling him he should unalive himself, which is generally not a good look. Speaking of looking, Moash can no longer do that because, for some interesting magical reason, the brilliance of Urithiru's light upon reawakening literally blinded him at the end of last book. That's what we think happened, at least. We have no idea what's actually going on here on a mechanical level. None of the other fused seem to be affected in any sort of comparable way. Whatever, we're getting a little off topic. Either way, for all intents and purposes, we can consider him blind now, I think. But that's not the only effect. Urithiru's brilliance also temporarily removed Odium's influence from Moash, allowing him to once again feel the pain of what he had caused. And because of this, many people are going to speculate that Mosh's character... Mosh? Many people speculate that Moash's character trajectory will sort of swing back around in this next one. He's going to end up finding redemption in some form, right? I don't know if I agree with it, but many, many people think that that's going to happen. Now, whether that's in the form of some sort of radiant bond or some form of change through cultivation powers, similar to what Dalinar experienced. And like I said, I don't think that I fully buy into the Moash redemption theories, but I do think that he'll have a large part to play in Wind and Truth, for better or worse. Next up, we have Rock, also known as Numuhuku Makia Lak. Is a fan favorite character that we haven't seen at all since the beginning of Rhythm of War. Rock left for his homeland, the Horn Eater Peaks, to face judgment for killing Amram all the way back during the Battle of Thalen Field. Now, while this may seem pretty unjustified to both you and I, at least hopefully, Rock is nothing if not a man of honor, right? He takes it upon himself to face his society's judgment for the act of killing. And I don't know what that punishment is going to end up being, but I would be very surprised if we've seen the last of Rock. In theory, he's going to have a whole novella written about him, explaining his journey back as well as his ultimate fate. Now, honestly, I can't wait for that because I love Rock, but I also wouldn't count on him playing a significant role in the upcoming novel. So stay tuned. We'll see what happens. I am not quite sure what to say about Sigzil without spoilers, I guess, but he's definitely around, and he's probably gonna be around in some capacity for, let's say, a while. He's gonna be around a while. He's also the current leader of Bridge 4 after Kaladin was asked to step down. Now, one thing to keep at the forefront of your mind as you're reading this is that Sigzil happens to be one of Wit's apprentices, right? This has been mentioned several times, but has yet to really pay off in any significant way that we've seen during the course of Stormlight Archive. Whether or not that has any payoff in this next book, who knows? But I would wager that it's going to pay off at some point. Who knows? And speaking of Wit, well, though Wit is a rather prolific world hopper, he appears to have been on Roshar for quite some time as of the end of Rhythm of War. He's also gone ahead and found a cryptic to bond with, making him a Knight Radiant, in addition to whatever other arcane powers he's been holding on to throughout his many, many years. While on Roshar, we've mostly been watching him play the role of King's Wit to Elhokar, but he's also gone out of his way to help the main characters along their individual journeys in significant ways. Hoyd, as he's most commonly known, has also been dating Jasna recently, which I could see backfiring rather significantly is if he has to leave quickly, or breaks her heart somehow. She is currently the Queen of Alethkar after all, and is slated to be around and likely in a position of great power for quite some time. Wit's probably not going to be able to stick around Roshar much longer, as the new version of Odium presents a significant risk to his ability to, be alive. Especially if Wit figures out that Odium was able to somehow trick him and steal his breath at the end of Rhythm of War, like many people, myself included, hypothesize is the case. I'd wager that Wit is going to be hopping away from Roshar for quite some time. But where does that leave his Spren? These are the important questions we need to be asking ourselves, because design is precious. Frankly, I haven't seen a good answer that I really agree with yet as to if he's going to bring design off-world with him, if he's going to leave design behind, or if he's going to find some other solution. Minor spoilers, we definitely have seen them off-world together at some point in the future though, and design is great, so I hope he sticks around forever. She is design? Design's a she. I hope she sticks around forever. One character that has been confirmed to be in this novel, if only for the prologue, is the Old King Gavilar. Every single prologue so far has focused on the night that this uniting force of Alethkar died, and the prologue from Book 5 is slated to be no different. In fact, it's confirmed to be directly from Gavilar's perspective, and in theory, it's going to tie all the diverse threads from that night together. There are almost certainly going to be some gigantic revelations of one sort or another in this chapter, and I am super duper curious to find out what Dalinar's brother has been up to this whole time and how it led to his demise. Most likely, we're going to have some sort of interaction with Gavinor as well. Now, Gavinor is the grandson of King Gavilar, the son of King Elhokar, and the nephew of the High King Dalinar, putting Gavinor into a unique political position that he most likely isn't going to be able to capitalize on until the back half of the Stormlight series. But he's definitely been through the ringer so far, even at the spry young age of 3. Before being rescued during the Siege of Kholinar, he was tortured by Voidspren, but to what degree and how it's overall affected his psyche remains to be fully realized. Keep an eye on Gavinor. He's going to be playing some sort of role coming up. Okay, let's go over a few groups that we should be paying some pretty close attention to going into Book 5. First off are the Heralds. These are, of course, 10 broken individuals that once held up the Oath Pact by themselves, preventing the desolations through sheer power of will. And every single one of those Heralds went on to abandon the Oath Pact, save for one, Talonal, or Talon for short. Now, I have a whole video going in depth about them that you can check out somewhere up there, and I also got a follow-up checking in on each of them after Rhythm of War. So if you're super interested in the Heralds, go watch that, and then come back to Bookborn's channel. Hi! Make sure to keep an eye out for the Heralds going forward. They're definitely mad, but they do still have a big role to play. Next up, we have the Ghostbloods. They're an organization founded by a particular individual that Bookborn and I have talked about extensively in the past. Now, the Ghostbloods' current purpose appears to be the protection of Scadrial, also known as the planet from Sanderson's Mistborn series. Now, how that relates to the actions of their agents on Roshar is more or less unknown. Mraize, in particular, appears to have gone somewhat rogue, and his current actions appear to have very little, if anything, to do with the actual protection of Scadrial. Going forward, I think it's going to be important to start asking the question, what are the Ghostbloods really aiming for, especially on other planets, and how far are they willing to go to achieve those goals? Finally, let's take a cursory glance at the Unmade. These are 9 incredibly powerful Spren working under the influence of Odium, but it's unknown just how much influence he actually has over their actions. Like, we've seen Sja-anat work explicitly against his wishes before. Hey, not cool. It is completely unknown how much influence Odium actually wields over the Unmade's actions. Like, we've seen Sja-anat work explicitly against his wishes before. She's enlightened Spren, formerly known to be Radiant Spren, Renarans, for instance, and those Spren have gone on to form Nahel bonds, fight on the side of honor. So something odd is going on there. Furthermore, there's several Radiants that are actually on their way right now to find and free Ba-Edo Mishram, who is an Unmade with some sort of deep uppercase C connection to Roshar as a whole. Now, it's clear that though these beings have been influenced by Odium, they do very much have agency in their own actions. They may even go on to either flip sides or, become something different from what they currently are. You're going to want to keep a close eye on them as well because, interesting revelations about their nature are almost 100% certain to pop up over the course of Wind and Truth. And I think that's all I have for now. These cats really need to be fed. They're getting a little hangry. I'm going to go ahead and hand it back to you, Bookborn, before they eat me.
Thanks, Lore. Always appreciate it. Except for that aside about Moash. You guys know that's not true, right? Anyway, I hope this was a helpful video for you guys. And Laura and I actually collabed on another video. This mostly was about plot and where we are, but we did a 10 top unanswered questions going into Winds and Truth, which will get more into the cosmere and the bigger implications. So if you also need a prepper on that, please check out that video. I will link it here. It is out today as well. And you should be ready for Wind and Truth. In the comments below, tell me the thing you're most looking forward to, knowing the resolution of. And as always, if you like these kind of videos, please like and subscribe. That is the best way to support me. And if you want to see what I'm currently reading, as well as other nerdy rants, you can check me out on Instagram at bookborn.reviews. I'll see you next time. Bye.